Hey everyone, glad you could join us. Today we're digging into something pretty fascinating.
Yeah, we're looking at what makes some people so innovative, and what drives entrepreneurs to take that big leap.
Exactly. We've pulled together stuff from, well, all over research, real world stories from founders.
Yeah.
The idea is to really unpack what makes them tick.
And we know you want insights quickly, right? So we're aiming for a conversation that's engaging, insightful, but also, just fun.
Definitely. So let's jump in. Thinking about innovative people first.
Mhm.
There are some common threads, right? One big one seems to be continuous reflection.
Hmm.
It's not just looking back, but like constantly questioning. Is this idea still right? Is this the best path? Almost like an internal radar.
That's a great way to put it. It's being really open to challenging your own first thoughts, even the whole direction of a project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the really top innovative teams, they weren't always the ones with the absolute best initial spark.
Oh, and
They were the ones most willing to say, hang on, let's look at this again, based on, new feedback or data, like that radar you mentioned, always scanning.
okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it sort of connects to another idea, this unattached exploration.
Mm.
Like not falling in love with your very first idea too quickly. Being able to explore different paths before you really commit.
Exactly. It's like they can hold off on getting fixated. They understand that if they explore more options, just, look around a bit more at the start,
Yeah,
they've got a much better chance of finding something really, truly new and effective. It's sort of breadth before depth initially.
right. Breadth before depth. I like that. Then there's this skill, iterating between abstract and concrete thinking. Sounds a bit academic, maybe.
Ah, maybe a little, but it's actually super practical.
Yeah. How so?
Well, it's about being able to zoom out, see the big picture, the concept,
Okay.
and then zoom right back in to the nitty-gritty details, the practical stuff. And doing that smoothly, back and forth.
Without getting stuck, either way.
Exactly. And that movement, that back and forth, it really helps you spot the gaps, the uncertainties.
Ah, okay. So you see where you need to test things.
Precisely. It helps you design much smarter experiments because you know what you're actually trying to figure out, like being the architect and the builder, checking the plans against reality.
Which leads right into being action-oriented, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
All the thinking is great, but you've got to actually do something. That drive to get off the whiteboard and, build a prototype or try something out.
Yeah, innovators tend to have that bias for action. They're not just thinkers. They feel this this pull to make things real.
See if it works.
Right. A prototype isn't the end goal for them. It's just a step in learning,
Yeah.
a crucial step.
Okay. Another one, being opportunity-focused. This is interesting. It's like they see the world differently.
Kind of, yeah. Even when things look messy or difficult, they seem to spot possibilities, pathways forward.
Where others might just see a wall.
Exactly. And think about that in a team setting. When you hit a snag, which always happens, having someone who can reframe it, who can say, okay, this door closed, but look, maybe this window over here is open. That keeps things moving. It keeps morale up. It might even lead somewhere better.
That's huge. Now, this next one, intellectual humility, might surprise some people.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, we often think of innovators as super confident, right?
Yeah.
But this is about being okay with not knowing everything.
Right. It's about being genuinely open to learning, comfortable saying, I don't have the answer here, or even sharing feedback that isn't great.
If it helps find a better solution.
Exactly. It's that growth mindset idea. If you admit you don't know it all, you're way more open to learning from others, to seeing different perspectives, and you need that for innovation.
And related to that, putting your ideas out there, especially when they're not perfect yet, that takes courage.
Oh, definitely. It feels vulnerable, right? Showing your rough draft, your early prototype.
Yeah, because it might get shot down.
It might. But that early feedback, even the tough stuff, is gold. It helps you find the flaws before you've poured tons of time and energy into the wrong path.
So it's learning over ego.
That's a great way to put it. Learning over ego.
Okay, so you've got an idea, you're brave enough to share it, now you need to test it. And that means designing valuable experiments.
Right. And this isn't about like massive year-long studies. No, it's about small, fast, focused tests. Things that give you quick, clear answers about what's working and what's not.
So you learn quickly.
Exactly. Maximize the learning, minimize the waste. You isolate what you want to test, get feedback fast, and then you can tweak things and try again. Very targeted.
But designing the experiment is only half the battle, right? You have to actually extract the learning.
Absolutely crucial. You have to pay attention, not just to what you expected, but especially to the surprises.
The unexpected results.
Yeah, or those little comments people make, the things you might easily dismiss. You got to dig into the feedback and really try to understand what it's telling you.
Which brings us back to that reflection idea again.
It does. It all connects. You're actively looking for meaning in the results, expected or not. Often, the real breakthroughs are hidden in those unexpected bits.
And then the final piece, maybe the most important, implementing the learning and adapting the idea.
Yeah, you can learn all you want, but if you don't do anything with it.
It doesn't help.
Right. The best innovators are agile. They absorb the lessons, they weave them back into the project, and they let the idea evolve. It's not static. It grows based on what they learn.
Okay, that's a really solid look at the characteristics. Now let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about some of the counter-conventional mindsets that often set entrepreneurs apart. John Mullins talks about this, how they often think differently than big established companies.
Yeah, Mullen stuff is really insightful here because it highlights how different the worlds are, right? A startup's reality is just miles away from a big corporation's. Different pressures, different resources.
Leads to different ways of thinking.
Exactly.
So the first one he mentions is saying yes to the unexpected, which is kind of the opposite of a big company saying stick to your knitting.
Right. Focus on the core business.
Yeah, but he tells this great story about Arnold Correa, the founder of Atmo Digital. Started in event management, but he just kept saying yes when clients asked for things outside that box.
Like what?
Like handling satellite uplinks for events, or even doing in-store advertising campaigns for Walmart. Completely different things.
Wow. So he just adapted based on customer needs.
Pretty much. It shows that adaptability, that focus on the customer leading the way, even if it takes you somewhere unexpected.
Makes sense for a startup trying to find its footing. The second mindset.
Problem first, not product first logic.
Yeah.
Big companies often tweak existing products, right? Add a new feature here, a different color there.
Incremental improvement.
Right, but entrepreneurs often start with a problem, a real pain point someone has. Mullins uses the example of Jonathan Thorne and his non-stick surgical forceps. He didn't just think, let's make better forceps. He started with the problem. Surgeons were frustrated because tissue kept sticking during operations.
Right, a specific problem.
Yeah, and then he figured out, okay, neurosurgery is where this problem is really acute, and developed the non-stick forceps for that need.
Yeah.
Problem first, then solution.
That's a fundamental difference. Find the pain, then build the cure. Okay, what's next?
Think narrow, not broad. This feels counterintuitive too, maybe.
Yeah.
Big companies want huge markets from day one.
Yeah, mass market appeal.
But lots of successful startups begin by focusing on a really specific small group, like Nike.
Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman.
Exactly. When they started, they weren't thinking about everybody. They were obsessed with making better shoes for elite distance runners. That was their narrow focus.
And because they were so focused, they really understood those runners' needs, right? Made products perfect for them.
Yeah. And that deep connection, that specialized product, that became the foundation to grow from later. Start narrow.
Got it. Okay, number 4.
Asking for the cash and riding the float. Big companies usually have money, sometimes lots of it. Startups, not so much.
Cash flow is king. Or queen.
Definitely. So entrepreneurs get creative. Think about Tesla taking deposits for the Roadster way back when, and for the Model 3.
Right. People paid up front before the cars were even built.
Exactly. That generated cash flow early, helped fund the whole operation. Riding the float means using the customer's money, essentially, between when they pay and when you deliver.
Clever. And necessary when you don't have deep pockets. What else?
Number 5, borrowing instead of buying. Again, big companies tend to own their assets, buildings, equipment, whatever.
Capital intensive?
Yeah. Entrepreneurs often look for ways to access what they need without buying it up front. The example Mullins uses is Go Ape, the treetop adventure company.
Oh, yeah. How'd they do it?
Trissenbecks, the founders, they partnered with the UK's Forestry Commission. They didn't buy the land. They essentially borrowed the forests, the existing infrastructure.
Smart. Leveraged existing assets through a partnership. Much lower upfront cost and risk. Very lean.
Exactly. Resourceful. And the last one from Mullins is not asking for permission.
Uh-oh. Sounds risky.
It can be. Big companies spend ages navigating regulations. But sometimes, especially with new tech or business models where the rules aren't clear,
Entrepreneurs just go for it.
sometimes, yeah. The classic example is Uber. starting in San Francisco. Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp didn't exactly wait for the city regulators to give them a green light.
They just launched.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that can cause friction, be controversial.
For sure.
But it also shows that bias for action, again, maybe a willingness to disrupt and force the rules to catch up later. It's definitely a pattern you see.
Okay, those are some really distinct counter-corporate ways of thinking. Fascinating.
Right, so we've got characteristics, we've got these mindsets. Now let's dive into the psychology behind it all, because that plays a huge role.
Yeah, the inner game.
Totally. One interesting link is between optimism and entrepreneurial emotion. Seems like being generally optimistic connects to feeling more positive emotions.
In a sense.
And that positivity seems to boost the intention, the drive to actually start a business.
Yeah, if you're feeling positive, the huge challenges of starting something new probably seem a bit less scary, right? You feel more capable of handling the uncertainty.
It makes the whole thing feel more possible. But interestingly, there's a flip side. Overconfidence.
Too much of a good thing.
Maybe. It seems like being overconfident, not just optimistic, might actually be linked to more negative emotions in the entrepreneurial journey.
How so?
Well, maybe if you're overconfident, you underestimate the risks, you ignore negative feedback.
And then reality hits harder?
Could be. The thinking is it might really make you less likely to stick with it, or even start, if your inflated expectations aren't met. It's a fine line between healthy optimism and blind overconfidence.
That's a really subtle but important distinction. Okay, what about other psychological stuff?
Well, something a lot of founders talk about, even really successful ones, is founder imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, feeling like a fraud.
Exactly, that nagging feeling like you're not really qualified, you're going to be found out. And the weird thing is, it can apparently get worse over time, even with success.
Worse? How?
Well, the analogy someone used was like starting as a dorky freshman, you progress, you get better, but then you're facing sophomore challenges, then junior, then senior. The challenges get bigger too.
So you feel like you're always playing catch up, always in over your head at the next level.
Kinda, yeah. Like you never quite feel like you've mastered it. Someone quoted Hemingway. We are all apprentices in a craft where no one ever becomes a master. Seems fitting for entrepreneurship.
Wow. That's comforting and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah. So to deal with all that pressure and uncertainty, mental resilience is obviously key.
Absolutely essential. Bouncing back, managing the stress.
Right. And there are ways to work on it, like this idea of a mind ninja workout sounds a bit cheesy maybe. But the steps make sense. Slow down enough to actually notice your thoughts. Question the negative ones like, is this really true? And then consciously choose where to put your focus.
So it's about becoming aware of your thoughts and not just letting them run the show. Training your mind.
Yeah, exactly. Like training any other muscle. It takes practice.
Makes sense. What else?
Grit. We hear this word a lot.
Perseverance and passion for long-term goals. Angela Duckworth's work.
That's the one. And apparently it's a better predictor of success in many areas than IQ.
Wow. Better than IQ.
Yeah. It's about sticking with something, really sticking with it through thick and thin, over years sometimes. It's related to being conscientious, but grit has this added layer of long-term stamina and passion.
And it's internally driven, right? Not just about wanting fame or rewards.
Exactly. It's the passion for the goal itself that keeps you going.
That staying power seems crucial for entrepreneurs, given how long and hard the road often is.
No kidding. And speaking of hard roads, there's the fear of failure. That's a big one for anyone starting something new.
Huge. It can be paralyzing.
It can. But the shift in thinking that seems helpful is moving from just wanting to succeed to also wanting to learn.
Reframing failure as feedback.
Kind of. Thinking about it as feeling your way towards success instead of, feeling your way towards regret. There was this example from Reddit, someone starting a landscaping business.
Yeah.
Started super small, made mistakes, learned from them, found a niche focusing on specific types of gardens, maybe really listened to customers, didn't obsess over the competition. They learned by doing and feeling small.
That's practical. Failure is tuition you pay for learning.
I like that. Failure is tuition. But we also have to acknowledge the tough side. Founders do seem to face higher rates of things like anxiety and depression.
Yeah, the mental health toll is real.
And burnout is a constant danger. Perfectionism, too, trying to get everything exactly right, can be crippling.
The pressure is immense. Building something from nothing, often with limited resources, long hours, it takes a toll.
So self-awareness, finding some kind of balance, seeking support, it's not optional, really. It's crucial for survival.
Absolutely. You have to manage your own well-being to sustain the effort.
So All these pieces, the characteristics and mindsets, the psychological factors that they do, seem to feed into this broader idea of an entrepreneurial mindset.
Right. Which isn't just for people starting businesses, is it?
No, not at all. It's described as a way of thinking, being open-minded, thinking critically, being resilient, planning long-term, but also being flexible.
Skills useful for anyone, really.
Totally. Navigating life, careers, projects. Key parts seem to be spotting opportunities, thinking ahead, and actually being comfortable with ambiguity, seeing challenges, chances to grow.
And the good news is it sounds like you can cultivate this mindset. It's not just something you're born with.
Exactly. The steps involve things like actively seeking out challenges instead of avoiding them, feeding your creativity, trying new things, meeting different people.
Getting diverse inputs.
Yeah. Setting clear goals. SMART goals, they call them. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Learning to work well with others, getting comfortable with basic finances.
Lifelong learning seems key, too.
Definitely. And that willingness to embrace failure as learning, which we talked about. You see these traits in action in people like the Airbnb founders.
Right. They saw an opportunity when they couldn't pay their own rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Oprah Winfrey, overcoming so much to build what she did. Richard Branson, always trying new things.
They embody that mindset in different ways. It really shows it's a learnable set of approaches.
So, adding another layer here, let's bring in Professor Steve Peters' work on high-performance psychology.
Okay. The chimp paradox guy.
That's him. His big thing is, before you can apply your mind effectively to anything like entrepreneurship, you first need to understand how your own mind works. Your blueprint, he calls it.
Self-awareness is the foundation. Makes sense.
Yeah, and he uses that model of the chimp brain, the emotional, anxious, impulsive part.
Versus the human brain, the rational, logical part.
Right. And he argues that a lot of anxiety isn't inherent. It's the chimp reacting, interfering. It's not necessarily reality.
That's powerful. If you can recognize when your chimp is acting up, you can manage it better, maybe rely more on the human part.
Exactly. He also talked about acceptance being a critical first step for high performers.
Acceptance of what?
Of reality, starting from where things actually are, rather than wishing they were different or fighting against the situation.
Okay, so acknowledging the facts on the ground first. Not resignation, but realism.
Right, so you can then act effectively from that realistic starting point.
Got it. Anything else from Peters?
Yeah, the influence of self-image on habits. This is really interesting. Basically, changing how you see yourself can actually drive changes in your behavior.
So if you start seeing yourself as, say, someone who finishes projects,
you're more likely to actually finish them. Your actions start to align with that new self-perception. It's about working from the inside out.
Fascinating. The mind is complex.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
And just briefly, there was also some research specifically on digital startup founders. This was in Indonesia.
Okay, what did that find?
It reinforced some of what we've discussed.
Yeah.
Things like entrepreneurial self-efficacy, that belief in your own ability to make it happen.
Your confidence in your startup skills.
Yeah. And innovation, obviously huge in the digital space. Those were key factors for success there.
Makes sense. Tech changes so fast, you need that belief and the drive to keep innovating.
Right. It also mentioned the importance of community and networks for support, which is probably true everywhere, but maybe especially in fast-moving digital ecosystems.
Having that support system.
Yeah. And needing both the innovative ideas and the tech skills. Plus, it touched on how psychological factors like belief in your plan, flexibility, motivation are vital through the different stages, like discovery and validation, when you're just figuring things out.
So those internal strengths really carry you through the early uncertain phases.
Seems like it. Okay. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We really have. From characteristics to mindsets to the deep psychology.
So, trying to tie it all together, it feels like innovation and entrepreneurial success aren't just about luck or one brilliant idea. It's this combination.
Yeah, a mix of specific traits like that reflection and action bias. Those counterintuitive ways of thinking, like starting narrow or borrowing assets.
And then these really crucial psychological foundations.
Yeah.
Resilience, grit, how you view failure, managing your own mind.
And developing that overall entrepreneurial mindset, which, as you said, seems applicable way beyond just starting a company.
Absolutely. And the really hopeful takeaway, I think, is that so much of this seems learnable.
Right. It's not like you're either born an entrepreneur or you're not. These are skills, attitudes, mindsets you can actually work on, cultivate over time.
Whether you're launching the next big thing or just trying to navigate your career or even personal challenges, consciously working on these things can make a real difference.
Definitely. It gives you more agency, more tools to work with.
So maybe a good question for everyone listening to think about is, which of these ideas kind of clicked for you? Which one resonated the most? And maybe, just maybe, what's one small thing you could try, one small step you could take to apply one of these insights to whatever you're working on right now?
Yeah, just a little experiment, perhaps. See how it feels to approach something with a slightly different mindset.
Exactly. Definitely some interesting stuff to chew on.